Meanwhile, former President Trump's so-called hush money trial in New York will resume tomorrow morning, with the prosecution's witness, bank executive Gary Farrow, taking the stand. Farrow worked closely with Trump's ex-lawyer, Michael Cohen, who is expected to be a key witness later on in the trial. Harvard law professor emeritus Alan Dershowitz joined me yesterday on Sunday Morning Futures with his take on the trial so far. Watch.
There is no crime in Manhattan. You cannot figure out what the crime is. That's why they're putting on all this evidence of non-crimes, trying to persuade the jury that catch and kill is a crime. It's not. Paying hush money is a crime. It's not. Putting a corporate statement is a misdemeanor barred by the statute of limitations. You can't suddenly resurrect that and turn that into a crime by invoking a federal statute, which the federal government refused to invoke, and the Federal Election Commission refused to invoke. There is no crime.
Joining me now is former acting U.S. Attorney General Matt Whitaker. Matt, thanks very much for being here. I'm going to get your take on this. Number one, do you agree that there's no crime? And number two, if so, what is this then? Is this all theater to make the public believe that Donald Trump is a criminal?
It's all political theater, and it's all intended to not only change the public's view and to, dirty President Trump up, but it's also, I think, completely trying to keep him off the campaign trail. You see that so effectively with, the way that the campaign, the way the trial schedule's laid out, the way that they're, not telling the lawyers who the next witnesses are. I mean, this whole thing is really a mockery of the legal system and how it's supposed to work. I think the jury's going to get to the end of all this evidence being presented and look at the jury instructions and just be like, wait a minute, what have we been doing for the last, 2 months? It's going to be really jarring for these members of the jury to understand that, like, there's no way under the law they can convict President Trump.
But how outrageous is that in and of itself? The fact that how much money is this costing? The fact that you've got to have all of these jurors, you've got 6 or 8 weeks of this. The cost involved. Meanwhile, New York seems to be burning. You've got people getting arrested and getting back on the street and committing more crime. You've got so much to deal with, and yet we are watching Joe Biden put his political opponent in a courtroom so that he could go politic and campaign leading up to the election, and Trump is holed up in a Manhattan courtroom?
Exactly, and it's such a good point, Maria. If you can think about how much better use of the time of the judge, of the prosecutors, of this courtroom could be going on, and it's not. And I think this is not only the biggest challenge of this case, but we look at just what the image to the United States of America is as to how New York's operating, but there's no political accountability. The DA, Alvin Bragg, has no political accountability. Nobody's going to vote him out of office. The judge has no political accountability. Nobody's going to vote him out of office. And so they can do this. They can abuse their power. They can use these novel legal theories that, again, are never going to be successful in the long term. But at the same time, New York is so blue that they're emboldened. And I think that's the biggest challenge until the voters speak up and say, this is a complete abuse of power. Our neighborhoods are not safe. We need to focus on the crimes and the criminals that are really hurting our communities. You're just going to end up with these types of show trials, completely politically motivated.
How horrible. No wonder people call America now a banana republic. Meanwhile, the Supreme Court is hearing arguments on Trump's presidential immunity claim. A decision may not come until June. Eric Trump joined me on Sunday Morning Futures yesterday, and he warned that the decision could impact charges for other presidents as well. Watch this.
The only people who are going to benefit are big law firms in Washington, D.C., because they are going to go after every single president. They'll start with Obama. Fast and Furious, right, where he gives 2,000 weapons to cartel members. And then they'll go to Obama, where he weaponized the IRS against conservatives. They'll probably go after Joe Biden for having cocaine in the White House. They'll go after Biden then for raiding his opponents' homes. I mean, where do you want to stop? Presidents need immunity in this country. If they don't, their entire tenure as president is literally going to be filled in depositions and subpoenas like they've tried to do to my father for the last 8 years.
Matt, I want to get your take on this because we did hear some snippets of the Supreme Court justices debating whether or not the immunity should be there. What are your thoughts based on what you heard last week from the SCOTUS justices.
Maria, what concerned me the most was the radical view of presidential immunity that Jack Smith and his team tried to articulate, that essentially said, trust the Department of Justice, trust prosecutors to make these decisions in a vacuum, because what the evidence of the abuse in the trusting of a prosecutor goes no further than just looking at what Jack Smith has done to President Trump. And so this is obvious that we need a much broader and expansive view of presidential immunity than Jack Smith believes the law is. And I think the Supreme Court, what I heard is that there is a majority of the court that feels that presidents have a broad amount of immunity, and they're just trying to find the outer bounds of that.
Yeah, that's what I feel like I heard as well. But you make a good point. Trust the DOJ, trust the FBI. I'm sorry. They've given us no reason to trust them, given all of the mistruths that we've been hearing from both in the last couple of years. Liz Peek, jump in here.
Good morning. The Harvey Weinstein trial was overturned because the prosecutor brought in a lot of other testimony from cases not related and not included in that particular prosecution. Isn't that what they're doing now in the Trump trial, bringing in the Karen McDougal settlement and other things? It seems like it's all about besmirching Donald Trump's reputation as opposed to actually presenting a legal case, which is totally about 34 payments to Stormy Daniels and how that was treated.
Such a great point, and you're absolutely right. What they're trying to do is bring a mountain of irrelevant evidence into this case to try to color the jury's opinion of Donald Trump as a human being, as an individual, that has nothing actually to do with the counts that he's charged with. I still am going to be very interested how they can elevate this to the felony. Remember, what they've articulated in court so far is that there's a state interference with elections law that is also a misdemeanor, that you combine that with his document claims, and that enhances it all to a felony, extends the statute of limitations. I just think this is a little bit of a magic trick that Alvin Bragg has done, and ultimately his house of cards is going to collapse.
But, it's also about painting a picture for the public, right? I mean, they want Donald Trump in court as if he's some kind of a criminal. They don't have a crime, is what most people keep telling us. And yet they're just going to keep bringing in lots of witnesses who could paint Donald Trump as a bad guy. And maybe that's what, in addition to what you said, keep him in court while Joe Biden campaigns, keep him off the campaign trail. You also have a strategy here to muddy him up.
You do, and remember, the interesting thing to me is I'm not sure any of this evidence we heard last week is unknown to most people that are, have been following any of this. This is not new evidence. Karen McDougal, all of these cast of characters, we've known about this. We've known about catch and kill. I think some of the interesting evidence was about, like, Tiger Woods and some of the others that have entered into these transactions.
Yeah. All right, we'll leave it there. Matthew Whitaker, always a pleasure. Thank you, sir.